Welcome, friends and enemies. It's time for Perhaps It's You, your favorite unofficial Unsolved Mysteries rewatch podcast. I'm Liz,
I'm Samantha.
and somehow we've made it through another week, and we decided to still keep making this podcast. Consider it a miracle. This is right here a miracle segment. I think everyone should thank my mom because I told my mom we were recording today and she was like, oh, good, because I want to listen to it. And I was like, all right, I guess I got to do it then. So
Your mom
thanks.
might be the only reason we're making this goddamn episode this week.
So thank you, Liz's mom.
Yeah, if you're in our Facebook group, give a big old shout out to Liz's mom. I know she's in there. Thank you, because that's the only reason I'm not laying on my couch right now.
I really feel like it's been a long year and it's like, bitch, it's mid-February. What are you talking about?
This last week has felt
damn.
like an entire year, I think.
Oh, damn.
So.
It's been a long year. Where you been, sis? It's February. Okay. Okay, so most people know that this episode is actually dedicated to my mom, but often we dedicate our episodes, each and every episode, to BD Wong.
Mm-hmm.
And a special shout out to him, because if people have been listening to the show for a while, perhaps they have a voice crush on my husband, Mac. And somehow, I'm not really sure how this is possible, but time is kind of nebulous and weird. We have been together for 20 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And to celebrate those 2 decades together, Matt got me a very special cameo from one, you guessed it, BD Wong. And I have to say,
absolutely true love.
I have to say, it was incredibly charming.
I watched it. It was charming. He admitted to being psychic. I didn't see that coming. That was a twist. There were like twists in this cameo.
It was, this is not a disparagement to him, but he was clearly like not prepared to do it. He had it like much,
not.
But I can't complain because it's much like doing this podcast. He just started and kept talking.
Saw where it went.
And it was, surprisingly long and very sweet. And he talked about how when him and his now husband were first dating, he would make him grilled cheese sandwiches on Tuesdays. And I don't know, the whole thing was just adorable.
It was very cute. I appreciate that Mac didn't make a distinction between Law and Order Original Recipe and SVU.
That's because
BD Wong just, I think, assumed that because you were such a fan of him that you were obviously a big fan of SVU, which we all know is not your favorite SVU, but we won't tell BD Wong.
I said no one tell him. Yeah, actually, okay, I'll go on a little rant here that maybe, I feel like this is less of a thing now, but maybe it's someone at point in your life, people have told you that you watch too much TV and that you're wasting your time. I have definitely heard this myself as an avid TV viewer. However, watching too much TV not only brought me to this very podcast you're listening to. If Samantha and I had been unable to talk about anything other than Unsolved Mysteries, our friend Alexa never would have said, maybe you should make a podcast about Unsolved Mysteries. And then we never would have started it on a whim. So there's one avenue, right? The watching too much TV has only made my life, mostly made my life better. It's definitely made me and Samantha better friends. It has mostly positive outcomes, right? But also in college, getting my first taste of cable TV, I was watching so much Law and Order reruns every day that was basically all I could talk about. And eventually this guy was like, you should really meet this guy, Mac, who has a Law and Order chart he made up in his dorm room, which would show you, based on the 2 detectives at the beginning, who the prosecutors would be. And I was like, really? Yes. This is extremely important. So that's how we met. So watching too much TV actually introduced me to the love of my life.
But and led you to getting a cameo from BD Wong himself.
And more importantly, that meant that I eventually got a video of BD Wong saying my name, meaning that there is a point of time where I could have been like, I wonder what BD Wong is doing right now, and it would have been thinking about me, which is incredible.
Amazing. Amazing.
I'm not going to post it because it's for me. It's not for you. But
Exactly. Well, and also it's not for business use, I think.
it's for personal use.
Yeah.
So
So
Mac didn't pay the whatever $1,000 it is for a business use one. But I have to say, great job. Also, doesn't he look amazing?
amazing.
I have a
Amazing. I can't wait for the next Jurassic Park movie.
I have to
It's just like
assume
he is the gift that keeps on giving.
I have to assume that's no makeup, BD Wong making that
I
cameo
think so.
because
I think
that's
so.
that was just him sitting at a desk and
He
like
didn't
his
even write out any
face.
notes, I don't think. So he definitely did like do his makeup.
Yeah, and he looks flawless.
Uh-huh.
Oh man, God. Okay, well that's the top of that's it. That's all my updates. Good night, everyone. Oh wait, no, we have to talk about Unsolved Mysteries.
Do we have to though? We've already talked about half of this episode.
This episode is a convoluted mess. So we are okay. Season 7 was up to such a strong start for 3
I take
episodes.
back all the good things I said about season 7.
And then just decided to phone it in so quick in the season. It gives up. And it's like, let's just do sort of a clips episode with a bit of new information. And it's all about the afterlife.
Was Robert Stack sick this week? Why did this happen?
I think it was probably just a money saving tactic so they could reuse some old footage. I actually really like the topic, but I sort of feel like they took a topic that I was interested in and then smothered it with a pillow. Like it's just not.
This is so
It's not well
boring.
done. It's not well done.
For something that you're right could be very interesting, but
I think
isn't.
they did tease this at the end of the last episode, and I was like, ooh, love it. Love a theme. Love this topic. This is going to be great. And then you're watching this and you're like, this is kind of a mess. I can barely even keep track of like whose afterlife story you're talking about right now. And also, yeah, we've already seen some of this stuff. Give me some credit as an Unsolved Mysteries viewer that I've already seen what you're talking about. I don't know. But we still got to talk about it because for some reason when we started this, we were like, we're going to do it all. It's because we didn't think ahead, much like BD Wong recording a cameo.
We did not put a lot of thought into this. That is correct.
No, we just started. And I have to say that's mostly worked out for us. But in this case, I was like, wow, I kind of wish we didn't have to do this.
Like,
Which is
would
a very
anyone notice if we just skipped episode 5? Whoops. Oh, I guess we did skip that episode. Well, it's too late to go back now.
Yeah, I believe in looking forward, so that just can't happen. Yeah, so we're still gonna do it. I know that's a really enticing beginning to any podcast. I don't want to do that. That's how they all start, isn't it? Let's be real.
I mean, not wrong.
Okay. Well, I hope you're listening to this on Repod because that's the only app that's had the decency, the integrity, and the bravery to give us money. So that you should definitely download that on your phone, find us, follow us, talk about how great we are. If you've already left us a 5-star review, this is a great way to just continually feed us the praise that we need to keep going. Because when I say that we're constantly considering quitting, I'm not exaggerating. So you got to feed our egos a little bit to keep us going.
Contemplating quitting is a conversation we had last week. So
it was actually like a very, very serious. Are we sure this is something we want to keep spending our time on? So, but we love you guys. We have such great listeners, and also my mom wanted to hear it, so here we are.
Yeah, but you can support us by supporting Repod and listening to us there. So
make us seem like big shots and like they spent their money well. Okay, I don't want them to be like, wow, that was a huge mistake. No wonder no one has ever bothered to give perhaps it's you any mattresses.
You know what? That guy that emailed us from Repod pointed out that our Patreon link was broken in like every episode we've ever recorded, we've ever put out there, and he still gave us money to host our show on Repod. So you know what? He clearly saw through the mess that is this podcast to the gold nugget within.
He said there is sometimes a treasure, and it's actually perhaps it's you. Okay, actually, you gotta go first, right? You're talking about.
I'm talking about Danyan Brinkley.
Okay, I guess that sounds like a real name.
It kind of does. I don't
Okay,
know.
I'll be honest, it just
Dannon
makes me
sounds like
think.
a yogurt company, but
Yeah, yeah, it makes me think of Zach and Cody giving away that Danimals yogurt prize. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those ads.
I think so.
They had some contest that they promoted the hell out of that was like meet Zach and Cody by eating yogurt or I don't know. But
Uh-huh.
that's
Uh-huh.
that's what his name makes me think of. And I'm sure
Yeah.
he doesn't want to know that, so no one tell him.
Well, Dannion Brinkley is not a yogurt mogul, so he
Few of us are.
that's so true. So this whole episode, I'm not sure if we explained this, is about the afterlife. So we are talking about near death experiences mostly, people who have seen beyond the veil and come back to tell us about it. That's what we're talking about. And if this sounds familiar, it's because they've talked about this before and you're going to get to rehash those mysteries in Liz's segment next. So look forward to that. This one though, this Dannion Brinkley story is new.
Yeah, is
Uh
this related to that Saved by the Light book that I once told you that I had read that book and you were clearly so disappointed in me?
Is that the name of his book?
I
Saved by
don't
the
know.
Light?
I don't know, it
I
might be.
forget. I forget. He did write a book like that. So maybe he is the author of that book. I don't know.
That book is like I think just to make it a book is like so ridiculously detailed about what heaven is like. It's like and then there's like 7 chapels on a cloud and then like it's just like
Yeah,
because
he did. He wrote that book. Dannion Brinkley is the author of New York Times and international bestsellers Saved by the Light and At Peace in the Light.
oh, I only read the first one. I was like 11. Cut me some slack, Samantha. Can't you just hear the judgment in her voice, everyone? The vitriol. I can. She thinks less of me.
I was trying to see if he has his own website. I don't see one. Anyway,
He
you can
just
buy
took
his.
that he just took that book money and bought an island. Everybody had that book back in the day.
You can buy his book on Book Depository for the mere price of $16.42.
That's way
That seems
what?
like a lot for
I
a
feel
book.
like I feel like we were drowning in copies of that book once upon a time. Where did they all go?
Okay, on Abe Books it's $3.77.
Even so, I feel like this book should be 16 cents.
Oh, that copy. Oh, but that's for a fair copy. What's a excellent copy going for? Okay, you can get a good copy of Secrets of the Light for $4.
All right. Well,
So maybe we'll put that on our book club list.
no, do not do that.
Yeah, you're right.
I insist very strongly.
All right. So on September 17th, 1975, in Aitkin, South Carolina, Dannion Brinkley, who was 25, was on the phone with his best friend Tom Hall when a storm passed overhead. Suddenly, a lightning bolt struck him through the window, sending at least 180,000 volts of electricity through his body. The jolt was so powerful that it left his shoes welded to the floor, and if the Unsolved Mysteries reenactment is to be believed, threw him clear across the room. I don't think it went down like that, but it's very dramatic. Very dramatic.
If the reenactment is to be believed, it's one of the funniest things that's ever happened. I'm sure this would be
It's
extremely
like a cartoon.
yeah. It's like something from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He really a lightning strikes him. He goes flying, and his shoes are left behind. Did your parents ever tell you not to talk on the phone during a storm?
Yes, and not to take a shower.
Okay.
I don't know if either of those things are true. I mean,
my parents didn't because apparently they were like, you know what would be really cheap if our kid got hit by lightning, we didn't have to feed her anymore.
your mom is listening to this.
Oh yeah, no, that was my parents' great money saving tactic. Just that when there was a storm, they were like, please talk on the phone. It's time for a shower.
If that's
Just
why
kidding.
he got hit by lightning.
I was assuming so, but I guess if it's through the window, it's just totally random.
Talking on the phone in a thunderstorm. Tell me, Google. Using a corded telephone during a thunderstorm is discouraged because the phone is physically connected by wires to the outside. A cell phone, however, has no such physical connection, and the electric current from a nearby lightning strike cannot reach it. It is perfectly safe to use a cell phone during a thunderstorm.
I did that. I can't tell you how many times, and I live to tell the tale. I'm a real daredevil.
So maybe see, I was thinking it came through the window, but it seems like maybe it went through the telephone lines. So
That was my assumption, but I don't
interesting. The
know.
Unsolved Mysteries doesn't say. At any rate, he was near dead. Danyan suddenly found himself. He's interviewed for the show, and he is describing what he experienced moments after the lightning strike. So he's laying on the ground. His wife is trying to resuscitate him. There's also a guy there named Tom. Is it the same Tom he was talking to on the phone? That's not made clear. Anyway, what he experienced was seeing himself as like an out of body experience. He found himself floating above his body, looking down at his wife, trying to resuscitate him. Robert Stack says that for all intents and purposes, he was clinically dead, but he recalls having this vivid near death experience. This is what he says. He was staring down a tunnel and he sees what appears to be
Wait. You left out a very important detail about him floating above his body, which is that he looked down at himself and thought,
Oh,
and then told us that he thought that he was better looking than that.
yeah, that seemed to be his first thought was, wow, I thought I was better looking than I has he never looked in a mirror?
I guess maybe it gave him some more perspective.
Yeah, well, that seems true based on what we learned later.
Or that just like he wasn't posing, or I don't know. He was just he looked down and he's like, "Damn, I am not as hot as I
I
thought
mean,
I
you
was."
probably moments after being struck by lightning, you're probably not looking your best. So he needed to cut himself some slack.
That was apparently a shock to him. I thought I was such a hottie that lying dead I would look spectacular.
I mean, that's what I hope for myself, but in reality, I don't think you're looking your best moments after, yeah, being struck by lightning.
That's why my new idea for my funeral is to have a painting painted of me looking beautiful in my casket.
Yeah, I think you're onto something with that.
So that I don't actually have to look great in my casket. Like I would love to be like wearing like a gothic veil and a bold red lip and just you know, have this like Snow White kind of vibe going.
It
But
also gives you the opportunity to have your like pre-death photo shoot moment.
yeah, I think that's really the way to go.
I agree actually.
Actually, you're like, for once, Liz, you're making sense.
For once. So he's staring down a tunnel. He sees a form coming out of a beautiful misty blue. Then all of a sudden he says, I not only felt everything I'd ever done and saw everything I'd ever done, I became every person that I'd ever encountered.
It sounds amazing.
Does it though?
Like
Maybe.
troubling. But
yeah.
I kind of would love this to happen.
It's interesting to feel everything you'd ever done and see everything you've ever done. Yeah, in a way, it might be nice, especially there's a nostalgia factor. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't remember Stacy.
Oh yeah, good old Stacy. No, it's trippy, and it's probably equally bad and good. But I am kind of envious.
Yeah, it does seem like he may have been. This near-death experience may have been similar to tripping balls. So Danyan admits that when he was young, he was, quote, self-centered and mean-tempered, nothing short of a bully. Can you imagine having Robert Stack say this about you? Because that's what happens in this episode. I mean, it seems true.
At least it's in the context of like I'm a changed man, but it is yeah, okay. Look, Robert Stack was probably kind of a bully. Are we thinking he was never a bully? I don't know. Do I know anything about Robert Stack? No, and I'm going to keep it that way. But should he be judging?
Probably not. But this does seem like Danyan's own words, to be fair to Robert Stack. So this pattern of being a bully continued during a tour of duty in Southeast Asia. We don't hear what he did that was bullying behavior. Kind of don't want to know, to be honest. But
very troubling.
He was not a cool dude when he was serving overseas. So great. While having this near-death experience, Danyan says that he was forced to confront those he had victimized through the years.
This photo montage of I assume just random people staring straight at the camera to represent everyone
all the people he's victimized, including a man with what seems like a blue stripe across his forehead.
Yeah, I don't know what
I
that
don't
was.
I do not know what that was.
I assume the little children were supposed to be like when he was a child, but it's also kind of funny to think of him as a grown man going around just bullying small children. Yeah, I mean it's effective. It's cheesy, but it is effective filmmaking.
I would say that's true. I think I don't know what's with the guy with the stripe on his head though. That kind of took me out of it for a moment, but
That guy was in a play. Yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say what was happening there. That was a Halloween costume that we don't understand.
I don't know. So he says, I felt the pain and the anguish and the anger and frustration that I had caused these people. And people don't realize that you judge yourself when this happens. You judge yourself, and that's what I did. So it seems like he had this moment to reflect on what an asshole he had been his entire life, and he's thinking twice about how he's treated people. So I mean, better late than never, I guess. Um, Danyan was rushed to the hospital. In the emergency room, his breathing faltered and then stopped. Minutes later, his friend Tom Hall was told that Danyan was dead. But when Tom went to see his body, he began to move.
This would be terrifying.
Yeah, this is like old-timey stories of
Well,
like suddenly you flinch or whatever when you're about to go in the ground.
this looks from the reenactment like it's in the morgue or
It does.
in the hospital, and he's like there to say goodbye to his friend, and then under the sheet, his friend is literally moving. I would
Yeah.
be traumatized for life.
Yes, yes,
This
I
is
would too.
like a Frankenstein moment where you're just like, "Oh, Liz, I'm so sad that you got struck by that lightning and flew across the room. Here I am to pay my respects." And I'm like, "What's that, Samantha?" Like you would faint and then you would never be the same.
It's true. It's true. So Danyan describes this moment as he went from a spiritual place and world back into this place where he's in the hospital under a sheet and looking up. He said he couldn't move, he couldn't talk, he just felt like he was on fire again.
Huh.
Miraculously, Danyan returned to life nearly 28 minutes after he had been declared dead. After a week in the hospital, he was released, but it was not smooth sailing. He was hardly able to walk or talk. His eyes were so light sensitive that he had to wear welder's glasses at all times. At this point, I mean, it's been weird so far, but it gets weirder. Danyan says that he began to experience vivid images of the future.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, he's no longer having a near death experience. I'm not really sure how this is explained, but this is what he says happened.
It's because he's been to the other side, Samantha, and he saw these images in little boxes or something.
Yeah.
But this is my note from this topic. He saw the election of Reagan and did nothing to stop it.
I sort of had the same
Wow.
reaction. He saw all of these things, the Gulf War, yeah, Reagan being elected. I forget what else. Oh, the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, he saw it all. To be fair to Danyan, it seemed like he was trying to tell people and they all were like, yeah, yeah, sure. I don't know.
He had a Cassandra moment. Nobody was really that interested in his ramblings, and then they all turned out to be true. And Reagan really, it's not just a horror story. Reagan really did become president.
Right. So he says that he was partially paralyzed for 7 months, but the visions and things that happened in this now what we call near death experience have stayed with him and are more coherent memories than anything he has ever experienced. So he claims that altogether he witnessed 117 future occurrences, including, like we said, the election of Ronald Reagan, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the Gulf War in 1991. Danyan later told his friends about the visions, and they verified that he did indeed predict events before they actually happened.
It's creepy.
Yep. He believes that his near death experience marked the birth of his psychic abilities and admits that in the months after the accident, he was simply a dazed and bewildered man who had undergone a dramatic transformation.
Sure.
He says that he was driving people nuts because he wanted somebody to tell him that it either didn't happen, which he knew it did, or to explain it. But of course, no one could explain this at all. It's completely unexplainable.
Also, he
And
wanted people to tell him he looked really cool in his welder's glasses, but nobody was willing to say it out loud.
yeah, yes, true.
They
Was
were
he the one?
jealous. They were
Oh,
so jealous.
I didn't take notes on. So you're right. So they do this like animation of his near death experience when he's presented with these future events, and it's just this animation of like little TV screens, and then they put like video footage of like the Gulf War and people in Russia lining up at soup kitchens, and they just play them over and over again. And that's presumably how he got. Didn't he get this from like 12 beings or something?
Yeah,
Did I
that
miss?
no, he saw like 12 angelic figures that he called beings, and he said that he was presented, he like went
With
somewhere and he saw,
briefcases that he opened and he saw the
yeah,
fall of the Soviet Union.
they were like tiny little boxes, and in each one, there was like more than 100 of them, and in each one was like some big future world event,
Yeah.
and that's how
Which,
he saw into the future.
does this happen to everyone who has a near death experience, or was he chosen? Because it doesn't seem like he did anything with this information. He just knew it.
You know, Samantha, I'm
I
gonna
have a lot of
surprise you.
questions.
I'm gonna surprise you by not knowing the answer to that.
You're right. I just have a lot of questions that are not answered by this
He
segment.
does too.
You read his book. You don't have these answers?
Oh my god, that was so long ago. No, I do not remember.
All right.
And I
Well,
can't read it again for
you
fear of you
failed this
unfriending me.
podcast. You failed this podcast. You have to read his second book.
Oh my
You're
god.
you're contractually obligated now. Okay, so
There is barely enough information for one book. I don't know how there was a second book.
well, he went on to do some psychic things. Maybe he's got some other insights. I don't know.
Oh.
So, Dr. Raymond Moody, one of the country's most prominent authorities on near death experiences, says that Danion's account is very consistent with other reports of patients who get resuscitated following cardiac arrest.
This is another thing that high school guidance counselors didn't tell me could be my career. I could have been an expert on near death experiences. Did anyone bring that up? No.
I think
Just a-
our school system is really failing us, to be
I
honest.
mean, it is. It's an indictment of our public schools.
You could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be a dentist, you could be an expert on near death experiences.
And I would have been like, say that last one again. I've already read one book.
Exactly. And there's a second one out there, so. In an attempt to verify Danion's psychic abilities, Unsolved Mysteries asked well-known parapsychologist Dr. William Roll to conduct a series of tests. Danion gave readings for 8 people he had never met before, and according to Dr. Roll, Danion picked out several details about the lives of the individuals that he could not have known. Dr. Roll describes Danion as one of the more remarkable psychics he has ever worked with.
Well, there you go. Hard to argue with, Samantha.
Also, Danion has been asked to consult on the brutal murder case. In August 12th, 1993, in Big Fork, Montana, John and Nancy Bosco were shot to death, execution style, as they slept. The police investigation turned up absolutely no leads. 2 months later, John's mother, Toni, met with Danion. Danion described the killer as a slight-built young man with black hair who knew John and the layout of the house. Danion said that the man was in college somewhere in the West, but predicted that he would be arrested in the very early part of December. Incredibly, Danion was correct in all of his accounts. 18-year-old Joseph, also who went by Shadow Clark, was which is a dog's name, not a nickname for a human.
I realize he killed 2 people, but also going by Shadow was unacceptable.
Absolutely, that's where he went wrong.
Which is the bigger crime, folks? Think about it.
I mean, I think that's where his life diverted. I'm gonna say he was on a path and he came to a fork in the road, and going right was taking the nickname Shadow. Going left was becoming, I don't know, a banker in Syracuse. And he went right and he ended up murdering an innocent couple.
You're right. That's when he broke bad.
Yep. Clark was arrested in December and later convicted, just as Danion predicted. Clark had lived in the murder house and had known the Boscos. He was attending college in the West. Danion had apparently solved the case through the power of his mind.
Yeah, but it didn't help anyone. He just was right. It didn't like lead to his conviction or something. It's just later they were like, "Oh yeah, that guy was right."
Are you saying you're not impressed?
I would be more impressed if he figured out who's going to win that Danimals yogurt contest.
Maybe he
But
did. We don't know he didn't.
you know what? You got me.
He didn't want to poison the contest, so he kept that to himself.
You didn't want to ruin the integrity of yogurt contests for children. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So, of his psychic abilities, Danyan says this. This is new to me, and sometimes it's troublesome because I pick up things that I don't want to know. And if someone's intense around me, I'm able to perceive it. And I'm still trying to figure out ways to turn it off.
Guy,
Um
if someone's being intense around me, I can figure that out too. That doesn't sound special at
do you
all.
do you think you have psychic abilities?
I mean, probably,
Were you
yeah.
struck by lightning and thrown across a room?
No, much to my parents' distress. I lived continuing to eat all their food.
So, at the time of the broadcast, Danny Brinkley was spending much of his time volunteering at hospices and nursing homes, and he believes that his near death experience left him uniquely qualified to counsel others. So, it seems like maybe getting struck by lightning unlocked the powers of his mind, and he is psychic now.
It does something to make him a better person.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, at least he's not bullying people anymore.
Yeah, he seems like he probably deserved to die for whatever he did in the army, but somehow he lived and
Turned it around.
it turned it around. There are so many mustaches in this segment, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Danyan himself has a mustache. I feel like it's not that remarkable. It's kind of thin,
It's
but
light. I wrote down light and tasteful as a
think
description of his mustache.
I think there was a red mullet in this one. That guy had a
Oh.
mustache too, didn't he? Or was that in a different segment? I forget.
Okay, so I have Danion's mustache written down as light and tasteful, and that one is called the Afterlifer. His
Okay.
best friend that he was talking to on the phone also
Tom
had
Hall,
a,
yep.
also had a mustache, and his mustache I wrote down was dark and rough.
Oh. Okay, okay. That's after hours mustache right there.
But I called it better not dead. And
Sure.
then also their friend Jimmy had a mustache, and I called that the requirement because apparently you have to have a mustache to be friends with these guys.
Well, yeah. How could they take you seriously without one?
So I don't know which one is the MVM, but there's a lot. If you like mustaches, that's a segment for you. Yeah, the dark.
We've sort of been waiting for the the end of the mustaches, because like you pointed out to me the other day, like as we get farther and farther into the 90s, like mustaches started becoming associated with like greasy porn stars and kind of fell out of fashion.
Yeah, we're gonna. It's gonna get to a point where we're really only gonna see law enforcement mustaches. We're not gonna see civilian mustaches, but we're not quite there yet.
Clearly.
So we get to see Banyan and apparently every single person he's ever met having mustaches, and you can decide for yourself which one is the most valuable mustache of that trio.
This is choose your own adventure of mustaches.
Yeah, none of them are really that great. So I get the second segment, which is just a hot mess. It's just like I guess the idea of these afterlife journeys is a concept, and I got really confused because it starts showing us stuff that we've already seen
Yes, in like quick succession.
with like different people talking as the narration, and I was like, I can't tell you who's talking right now. Like we hear someone say, as I went unconscious, all I saw was darkness. The darkness gradually took the shape of a tunnel, and way off, absolutely positively to infinity, appeared this tiny little speck of white light. This was the most beautiful thing I had ever experienced in my life. Who said that? I honestly have no idea. We then get some like clips that we've seen before. If you recall, a guy having a near death experience and then seeing all of his life like it's on this disco lit lazy Susan. You get you get that again. You see a woman being led down a tunnel by an angel who calls herself Elizabeth that may or may not have been me. We see that again. And then Stack, I think Stack asks us, is the near death experience truly a peek into the afterlife, or is it a physical manifestation of the human body breaking down as it dies? So this part I was actually pretty interested in. We hear from Susan Blackmore. Oh God, I didn't write it down. I think she's a psychologist, but she says that all components of the near-death experience can be explained logically because in these situations the brain is experiencing a lack of oxygen. So I don't have enough of a scientific understanding to explain this why this is, but she's saying the image of a tunnel with a far off bright light can be explained by cells in the brain firing as they die. And like she said it in a way that makes sense, but I also like don't know enough about the brain to really like she's saying like the physical structure of a tunnel like corresponds with the structure of a brain and like how it
Hmm.
would appear as things are firing like in your mind's eye, but I don't really know enough about the brain to explain it. I'm willing to take her word for it. And then a lack of oxygen can also, as you might suspect, produce visions, hallucinations, flashbacks, even the feeling of floating, flying, out of body experiences, which could also be explained by your body releasing a rush of endorphins because it's dying.
Not
Um,
not hearing anything about 12 beings with 117 briefcases.
I think that would just have to go under hallucinations. And maybe those hallucinations are very specific
Just
and
saying, this woman claims to know what she's talking about.
um and that she okay. And I liked that she went on to say that just because you can explain these experiences with chemicals doesn't mean the experiences themselves aren't important. That she thinks that's not true. They are important because having these type of experiences changes your expression on your life, yourself, other people, and that people do have like their life is altered by having these near death experiences. So if it makes you a better person, if it makes you kinder to other people, if you're like Banyan or Danyan, whatever his name was, and you stop being a bully, like yes, that's a very important experience in your life. So whether or not you literally went to a heaven and you talked to 12 beings, well, it doesn't really matter. He had this experience, and because of that, he gained perspective on his life that he had basically been a terrible person and that he got sort of a second chance and he wanted to do better. I
Mhm.
really liked that perspective. I
I like it too.
appreciated it. I would say sort of that I would agree with Susan that probably I think it's just different language for the same thing that you would say like, "Oh, it's I went to heaven and saw this and that," but that's really just what your brain is like experience. It's the same thing, right? Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Anyway, then Robert Stack has this really clunky transition where he says that if people can have near death experiences, that means ghosts can come back to finish unfinished business. And you go, what?
Does it? Does it mean that?
Apparently. So now,
Okay. I guess
Samantha,
the veil between worlds is thin.
I guess. Look, they ran out of afterlife stories and they just switched to ghost stories. So now, Samantha's going to talk about Karen Walker, and if that name sounds familiar, it's because that's a character on Will and Grace. But that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about a real person.
Yes. So this story is sad.
Yeah, actually, it really
This
is.
made me really sad. So Karen Walker was the only child of Jean and Tom Walker, born in 1949. She loved to read stories with her parents. One particular story she liked was The Three Musketeers. And this story became a symbol of their family and the closeness she had with her parents. So it seems like Karen Walker and her mom and dad were super close and they were really good parents. And like everything about this was idyllic and adorable.
Really
They would
cute.
say the Three Musketeers like famous line of all for one and one for all. It was kind of like their family motto. And overall, she had a great childhood with her family. They were close. She was an only child. She was their whole world, and it seems amazing. So when Karen was 17, she began dating a man named Jim Alvarado. Jim did not do well in school. He struggled. So Karen took it upon herself to tutor him in an attempt to help him get his grades up. um he would find she would be they show in the reenactment one of their study sessions, and what would happen is Jim's mind would wander, and she had this thing where she would kick his leg in order to get him to focus on the task at hand and get him to like come back and do whatever task they were trying to work on and study. So and he talks very fondly about her, about how like everyone else basically gave up on him because he was doing so poorly. But she saw through that and saw that he had intellect. He just needed, you know, help, and he needed someone to reach out to him, and she did that for him, and that really had an impact on him and helped him to succeed. That was just kind of like the person she was. Um,
He clearly loved her so much.
yes, he did. And this is where the story gets super fucking sad. In December 1969, Karen, who was then just 20 years old, was diagnosed with a fatal form of cancer. It was called Ewing's sarcoma. I believe this is a cancer in the bones,
Ugh.
and it was a terminal diagnosis. So she did begin extensive radiation and chemotherapy treatments. Her mom is Jeannie Walker is interviewed for the show and says that, you know, they decided that this was a horrible thing that has happened, but it's not going to tear our family apart. We are going to do everything we can to help Karen overcome this. And, you know, they went with her to all her appointments, and through it all, they kept this like Three Musketeers mentality that we're going to stick together. We are going to fight this. Unfortunately, on February 20th, 1970, Karen suffered an agonizing setback. So things seemed to be going well with the chemotherapy. She was not experiencing as much pain as she had before. And things like generally were seeming like they were getting better. And they were feeling a lot of hope. And then one night she woke up with this horrible pain in her leg, in the area in which the cancer had started. And unfortunately, the cancer had eaten clear through the bone all the way through. So this is where
Ugh.
her health really started
Ugh.
to decline rapidly. She tried to live with the cancer, and tried to sort of push through it. Her and Jim made plans to get married. They were hoping to get married on December 19th. However, on December 7th, she lapsed into a coma. Um, when she was in the hospital, her parents never left her side. Her father Tom brought her a single red rose every day and placed it next to her bed. And then one night, her mom was at her bedside, and Karen awoke from her coma, which was very unexpected. And she had this conversation with her mom where she said that it was her time, that she was choosing to go, and she wanted her mom to tell Tom and her father that this was her decision, that she can't go on like this, and that she needed to go. It seems like a conversation that, first of all, is absolutely heartbreaking. But it seems like
Ugh.
it was a conversation that kind of helped, you know, her mother bring closure to her mother. Her mother says that she closed her eyes, and at the moment that she passed, her mom saw what seemed like a haze or a smoke come out of Karen's head. And that was December 17th, 1970, which was just 2 days before her and Tom had planned to get married. So after Karen's death, she apparently began contacting her family from beyond the grave. Jim claimed that on the night after her death, he felt like she kicked him, just like she had done during their study sessions to get him to focus. A few weeks later, the Walkers went to visit relatives in San Francisco. While they were there, they sought a psychic, hoping to contact Karen's spirits. After 3 failed attempts, they left to go back home. But while passing through Santa Barbara, they decided to try one more time. They contacted a medium who Jeannie had once read about. The medium's name was Reverend George Daisley. And when they contacted him, he said that he was booked for several months. However, he claimed that he then received a message from the spirits, which said that he had to see them immediately.
This
The
might. This
Walkers
is if this is a like marketing tactic, effective.
It was effective. So the Walkers agreed ahead of time to limit the information that they gave to Reverend Daisley. They did tell him that their daughter had passed recently, but they did not give him her name. The meeting began at 10 a.m., and he told them that she was with them and that she was no longer in pain. He then said that she told him that her and her parents were, quote, the Three Musketeers, and that they would always be together. The Walkers were certain that Reverend Daisley could not have known about this information, this inside thing that they had in their family with the Three Musketeers.
I don't even know how he would look that up.
I know. That really got me, honestly. This is like one of those things where you're like, how could he have, like, that would be such a good guess to just pull that out of nowhere. Three
It's
Musketeers.
one
Like,
thing that he figures out her name and her birthday. Like, that's probably information that is somewhere publicly available. But to know that they had this, like, family inside Three Musketeers motto thing, like,
yeah.
how would you that's not public record. Like, I don't
No, and how
understand.
would you like? And before you could easily Google someone, or like these days, I would say, well, maybe he went on their Facebook page and scrolled back and saw this Three
Right,
Musketeers
right, right,
reference
right.
in like a post they made. But that obviously was not a thing back then. So what did he do? Comb through microfiche at the local library? It seems like he was super busy and dropped everything to see them unexpectedly.
Also, why
So
would that be in the newspaper?
it wouldn't, I don't think.
I don't think so
So
either.
yeah, this I'm generally very skeptical of psychics, but this one I thought was, I mean, very interesting.
Yeah.
And like Liz said, he also identified her name as Karen. He also correctly identified her birthday, which was January 12th. Also, he accurately described two photographs of Karen as a child.
Yeah.
Jeannie claims that Karen has contacted her several times and influenced her to write a book about her experience that she called Always Karen, which was published in 1975. Jeannie believes, based on what Karen has told her, that when we die, we go into another dimension. According to Karen, the body dies, but there is a new body that is waiting for everyone, which is sort of a nice thought. Um, yeah, that's the end of the segment. Unfortunately, Jeannie Walker passed away in 2013, and the psychic Reverend Daisley passed away in 2001 at the age of 90,
Wow. I'm kind of
according to
curious
Unsolved Mysteries Wiki.
to read that book, but also, and I don't want to be mean, but I'm assuming the book's not very good.
No, I had the same thought.
But I am
The
curious about it.
yeah, I'm interested, like, what kind of insights Jeannie got from Karen from beyond the grave. She seems to know what happens after we die.
I mean,
We get
it's a
this new body. I hope my body is banging.
yeah. I
If
mean,
I can put in a request.
dear God, may my afterlife body be super banging. Thank you. Amen. Amen to that. Yeah, I mean, such a sad story that I'm glad. Look, I don't know that this is true, but it does seem that it. I don't know how he faked it, but it does seem to have brought them some solace after such a horrible
Mhm.
thing, and so I'm glad for that, I guess. Because yeah,
Yeah.
it's so fucking sad. Okay, we have one more. This is from Ellerslie. Sorry, I already can't remember. I watched this last night. I can't remember. Ellerslie, Georgia. It is about a little girl named Heidi Warwick who can make contact with real people who passed to the other side decades before she was born. It's actually pretty scary and creepy.
A little bit. Something about kids, I don't know.
Okay, because this is the opening reenactment. We open with a man standing in the like front doorway, whatever you want to call that, and this little girl with pigtails is standing there, and this man is telling her very slowly that he lives next door. And there's a swing, and wouldn't she like to play on the swing? And while that's happening,
No. No, you don't.
and while that's happening, slow, tinkering, creepy piano music is playing. Oh, and did I mention this guy has blood all over his shirt and one hand is a bandage and blood is seeping through the bandage? And he's going, "Hello, little girl. Wouldn't you like to play next door at my house?" And I'm going, "Oh, God." But it's not what you think. It's not what you think. Okay. He really says the sentence, "I bet you like to swing, don't you?"
Oh my god.
Nope, nope, nope. Okay, so this was February 1989. Just after moving to Ellerslie, Georgia, little Heidi reported that a man named Khan appeared at the door. That he was wearing a white t-shirt covered in blood and had a bloody bandage on one hand. She literally went and asked her mom if she could play with the man with, quote, gray hair and blood on his shirt. But when her mother frantically ran to the door, he was gone. Logically, her mother thought someone was trying to kidnap her daughter and called her husband to come home.
Yep.
The father has a mustache that's called Football Hero Mountain Range, because I think that gives you the perfect impression of what this guy looks like and what his mustache looks like. Okay. But they failed to find anyone in the neighborhood that matched this description. After this, Heidi began to see a man she called Mr. Gordy in his yard, and he wore a suit and shiny black shoes. He also is talking to her about a swing. I just wrote that at this point. What the fuck?
Mr. Gordy.
This is the scariest neighborhood ever. Okay. So her parents asked around town, but no one had heard of a Mr. Gordy, and they assumed that this was just their daughter's imaginary friend. I, for instance, had an imaginary friend named Jimmy, and I once went to kindergarten and told everyone that my mom had not let Jimmy in the car and had left him on the side of the road. So, sorry, Mom. Sorry about that.
Poor Jimmy.
Everybody definitely thought Jimmy was a real person that my mom had just left somewhere. I don't know why people took my childhood rant so seriously, come to think of it, but they apparently thought that Heidi was making up a man named Mr. Gordy who wore a suit and hung out in the backyard. They assumed this was an imaginary friend and didn't think much of it. However, their neighbor then found some paperwork in their home from the previous tenants. The deed was signed by a James S. Gordy, which is incredibly creepy, everybody. They were already going around town asking if anybody knew a Mr. Gordy. They thought that maybe it was the same person she had seen earlier. They were asking if anybody knew a Con Gordy or a Con or a Mr. Gordy, and everybody was like, no, we don't know what you're talking about. Your child is clearly lonely and a little deranged. But then they find this deed that really is signed by a Mr. Gordy. We hear from a Catherine Ledford that she knew Mr. Gordy when she was a small child because he was the Sunday school superintendent. He had died in 1974. So that is more than a decade to Heidi seeing him. He is described as a good man who loved people and was very friendly. Heidi said that Mr. Gordy looked normal to her, just like someone real, when her mom asks her if he looked like a ghost, if he was like see-through at all, and she was like, no, he looks totally real and normal, Mom. Catherine did not have a photograph of Mr. Gordy, but she brought over some photos of her relatives and ancestors who had lived in that house next door. Heidi looked through the photos and recognized one man as the man she had spoken to in a bloody shirt. His name was not Con, it was Lon. And they realized that since she's like 3 or something, that she hasn't been saying Con, she's been saying Lon. They just she doesn't say it quite right.
Yeah.
So his name was actually Lon. He died in 1957 from cancer. He had lost his hand at a very early age in a cotton gin. And it's the same hand that Heidi saw bloody in a bandage.
This is spooky.
Which they already know, right? And then they're looking at this photograph of a guy with only one hand, and she's like, oh yeah, that's him. That's Lon. This is honestly like how horror movies start. Okay. She consistently saw these 2 dead men for 3 years. Then her mother, Lisa, became pregnant. This is when a more sinister spirit that they call Paul at one point, but then never again, I don't really know, began to appear in a dark hallway. Heidi had previously never been scared by her visions, but she was absolutely terrified of this new one, who was described as a frequent but unwelcome guest, which is a very hilarious way to talk about a ghost.
Yes, it is.
Her parents at one point seriously considered moving, which this is the point of the horror movie where you're like, oh my God, just move, right? Like, I'm sorry about all the money you sunk into the house on the renovations or whatever, but the halls are dripping blood.
It's time to go.
You are going to die. Your life is worth more than your credit score. Like, please leave. But they sit down and like talk about like, are we going to move? And Lisa is like, you know what? I think Heidi just has a gift and she's going to see dead people wherever we go. And it does not matter what house we live in.
God, imagine having that conversation.
Okay. So 2 weeks after the baby is born, the visitations took a, quote, horrifying turn. One night, Heidi woke up crying, and Lisa found that she had 3 deep scratches across her cheek that seemed deep enough like they would scar. And they try to tell themselves, like, Heidi probably scratched herself in her sleep. But honestly, if you're, the force required for a scratch to be deep enough for it to scar is not...
You're not doing that in your sleep.
You're not doing that. She's also a tiny little child. Like, her fingers are strong enough, like, to do that by accident? No. Okay.
No, that's clearly a demon.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Okay, a couple weeks later, her dad, which I don't remember his name, but he's the football hero looking guy. He wakes up in the night to find he has he like wakes up in pain, like lifts up his pajama shirt and there's 3 deep claw marks on his side. The next night he wakes up again to find 3 claw marks down his back. The following night they're down his chest.
All right.
Ah!
It's time to go. It's get out.
Okay, yes, maybe your daughter, is starring in The Sixth Sense and she's going to see dead people wherever she goes. However, there seems to be something very bad in this house that does not like that you had a baby for some reason. You need to leave. You need to
Yeah.
leave. And we've had people write in with their own ghost stories that involve scratches, and those are the ones that freak me out. Like, most of the time, I'm like, it's just a roommate, whatever, deal with it. The ghost is harmless. But but if it's scratching you while you're sleeping, that's a whole other level.
Yeah, I don't want ghosts touching me. I'm not consenting to that, ghosts.
Yeah, ghosts, learn about consent, okay? God. Okay, but also, I do love that the dad very calmly explains that it's not a rat that scratched him because he would have noticed if a rat was crawling on him in his sleep. And I'm like, dude, I do not think a rat is leaving
Imagine?
three.
You have such bigger problems if there's a rat crawling on you every night scratching you.
Also, that no one is seeing it. Like, that it's somehow scratching you, like, deep enough to wake you up with 3 giant gashes. Like, what rat is that? It's Splinter out for revenge. I was like, guy, I like that you're trying to disprove the logical explanation, but not for 1 second did I just go, oh, that house has a rat problem. No, no. Mm-mm. Okay, so at this point, they're obviously very concerned and they're worried the ghost is going to scratch the baby, which I say this is not even a ghost, this is a demon. But okay. So they call again parapsychologist Dr. William Rule, the expert in past lives. And he brings Heidi some photographs to identify. And this is supposedly we see the first time here on Unsolved Mysteries, her looking at these photographs, which is sort of a photo lineup. He's brought a bunch of old photographs, and one of them is Mr. Gordy. So the thing is, can Heidi pick out Mr. Gordy from the set of like a dozen old timey photographs? Which she does immediately. She's like, oh yeah, that looks like him. And that was Mr. Gordy. So Dr. Roll thinks that these are genuine experiences. He doesn't know why Heidi seems to have this gift, but doesn't really question it. Heidi explains to us that she is not scared of Lon or Mr. Gordy because they are pleasant and they talk to her and they play with her, but she's scared of the other spirits that don't talk to her and do not have visible faces. And I was like,
okay, we're gonna back out of this house slowly.
and I
We're
was
not gonna pack our bags.
let's go.
We're going on a little trip. Everybody get in the car.
And her mother Lisa explains that this whole time, Heidi she hadn't even recognized them as ghosts, right? She thought they were real people. She wasn't concerned about them. She seemed to like playing with them. And then when this other spirit shows up, she's like screaming. She's freaked out all of a sudden. They're like, you've never been scared of anything. What's happening? And she's like, no, this one's different. It doesn't even have a face.
Cool.
Her parents also have complete faith in her child, and they absolutely think that she is gifted with a sixth sense. Like, there is no question in their mind. Though the dad does say that...
There's no question in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, this story is scary as hell. The dad just tells us that he would prefer not to see the spirits himself. And I was like, if they don't have faces and they just hang out in the dark hallway, I don't want to see them either. Nope.
Nope.
Dr. Roll himself does have a mustache, everyone. It is thick and gray. And I wrote down that it is obviously called the Ghost Whisperer. What else would it be called?
Of course.
This guy comes in to confirm if there's ghosts. Okay. And then my last note is that there's this amazing photo of Heidi wearing this like peach speckled Western shirt with the largest bolo tie I have ever seen in my life.
Yes.
So not only is she like gifted or psychic or whatever, but she has amazing fashion sense, even as a child. I don't know what happened to Heidi. I hope they all lived in that house. I mean, I hope they all lived. I hope they left the house. I don't know what happened to them, but that's the end of the segment. That's the end of the episode. Right. I want to look up Heidi right now. I just want to Google, was Heidi murdered by ghost? Let's find out. I actually really like that last segment, and I just kind of wish it was in a different episode.
Yeah, because the rest of this sucked.
Yeah, so let's rate it.
Okay, so our first category is mysteriousness.
I mean, I guess death is mysterious, so I'm gonna say thumbs up.
Yeah, it's kind of a default rating, but you're right.
Okay, whoa. I just have to tell you, this Unsolved Mysteries wiki update for Heidi, which
Okay.
they're letting you know that this segment is unsolved, you guys.
Okay, well, I was wondering, so.
They weren't. This is why I didn't even look it up because it's like, oh yeah, it's solved. They proved the existence of ghosts. No, it's unsolved. Heidi is now a young woman and no longer lives in her old family home. She reports that she has not seen Mr. Gordy for years. However, she continues to see the mysterious dark figure.
What?
Yes!
It's haunted her for her entire life?
As well as numerous other spirits. The sightings are so frequent that she now takes them in stride. No explanation has ever been given for her visions.
Oh my god.
Sadly, her
That's terrifying.
her father, whose name was Andrew, so I apologize, Andrew. Sadly, Andrew passed away in 2012 at only 45 years old.
Oh, the Unsolved Mysteries curse.
I know. You could learn more about this. It was featured in an episode of featured in A Haunting. It was the basis for the movie A Haunting in Georgia.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, so let's go back to rating. I'm going to say that it is mysterious because death. Thumbs up.
Yep. Reenactments.
Okay, that guy flying through the air because of lightning. I have to give it a thumbs up just to that. I burst out laughing.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I think a thumbs up is in order.
And
They recycled the Lazy Susan.
Yeah.
That's fine. They were funny.
Yeah, I also this reenactment of Heidi talking to Khan in the doorway is one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if it was supposed to be or not, but I'm scarred. So thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up. Fashion.
You know what? It was kind of except for Heidi.
It's fine. Heidi was good.
But I'm gonna say it's not really remarkable. You would not watch this episode for that.
You would not.
No.
And the mustaches were just okay.
Yeah, so thumbs down actually.
Robert Stack. Well, I think he was sick this week. I don't even know that he was in it. So
He just introduced each segment like as it went to commercial break and was basically like, people die. Let's find out about that. He phoned it in. He phoned it in. They just haven't been one
Yeah.
mausoleum. It's just like they shot it all in like 20 minutes. I'm not impressed. Thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Okay, on our Robert Stack scale, 0 to a possible 5 Robert Stacks. I did not like this episode. You're right, your last one was good, but by the time I got to it, I was so over this episode that I feel like I didn't appreciate it as much.
Yeah, you texted me that it was the worst episode we had ever covered. So
I did say that.
I'm gonna say 2.5, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a generous 2.5, but it's mainly that last segment. I wouldn't recommend you watch this one, to be honest.
No, I'm giving it the half entirely because of Heidi. I found this, and maybe you wouldn't care if you weren't like taking notes on it or whatever, but I found the like reuse of old segments very frustrating to figure out like what was happening, and it does just kind of point out that they're all sort of all the same and not that interesting.
No, and I mean, it was hard for us because just making this podcast, which doesn't relate to anybody else, but we couldn't like divide up the episode like we normally do, where we each take a segment because it was all just one long ass segment.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic, but I feel like they kind of phoned it in, is my feeling.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it could have been a lot better. So wasted potential also is bringing it down. I think 2.5 is generous.
Agreed.
Just be happy with your 2.5 Unsolved Mysteries. Quit arguing that you deserve better. You earned a 2.5, okay? I'm not changing your grade. All right, so we like to close up the show with a recommendation. It's kind of a little, if you're like super scared about Heidi and the fact that she never stopped seeing that terrifying dark figure without a face that is sometimes named Paul, that's why we do a little palate cleanser. I'm sure you're really glad I made that noise.
We pretend to be influencers.
Yeah, which, I mean, we are. I'm sure.
I did influence at least one person to watch Abbott Elementary, and I'm thanking that person publicly for doing your part to keeping that show on the air for me specifically.
I started watching it too, so there you go. That's 2.
Well, thank you. Thank you. 2 people. We're doing the hard work.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I feel like it's getting a little bit more love than it was when it first came out. So, fingers crossed.
I've seen a lot of people talking about it on Twitter, but also I don't know how that really reflects to like the general population because
That's how I feel too.
because I follow
It's just
a
like
bunch,
your algorithm or whatever.
but also I follow a lot of weirdos. I don't think I follow people with like mainstream tastes. So so I don't really know how popular it is, but I do feel like everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so as an influencer, I am recommending granola, specifically made by Three Sisters Kitchen in New Mexico. This is another thing that I learned about because of my friend Nicole sent me some granola for Christmas, much like those Snowball Cup cookies, and I went, "Oh, this is one of the most delicious things I've ever tasted in my life." So she sent me the biscotti orange granola, which is made with ingredients grown in New Mexico. It says organic ingredients. I don't know if it's all organic or not, but it's made by a nonprofit in Albuquerque, and this is so intensely delicious. And I know my dad is listening to this right now going, "Liz, why didn't you send me the orange biscotti one?" And I was like, "Well, Dad, it was sold out. I'm sorry. I had to send him other ones." But it's a like very unique flavors, including because it's New Mexico, they have ones that have red chili and green chili in them. If you can get over the idea of spicy cereal, delicious.
I might be too Minnesotan for spicy cereal.
Honestly,
I like the idea of the orange biscotti though.
it's so good. Okay, and if even that, and that is like not spicy, but definitely very flavorful.
Okay.
They have some more mild ones like blue corn mulberry, honey almond goji berry.
I like the sound of these.
They're all super delicious, and they're not like really anything else that I've had.
Okay.
And I've ordered now from a couple times because I'm bad at preparing food for myself, and I'm bad at like
Same.
I'm bad at actually like eating meals and blah blah blah. I don't know. You're supposed to do that every day, apparently. What? How?
It's every single day.
So, being able to just I was like, oh yeah, cereal. Just pouring yourself a bowl of delicious granola.
So say the name of the company again.
So it's called Three Sisters Kitchen. And it's in Albuquerque, and I feel like I should have probably learned more about their story and why it's nonprofit. I don't really know, but this granola is fucking delicious. I will say, okay, my only complaint is that no matter what you order, it's flat rate shipping of $10. So you're probably not going to order one.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's good. It's fine. Just order a few. Take my word for it.
Literally looking at their website right now.
See if they.
Oh, it's a nonprofit community food space in the heart of downtown Albuquerque, a place where delicious, affordable, and locally produced foods come together to nourish our community from the ground up.
Sure.
Seems like a good place.
Great. Love it. Wait, is that orange biscotti one in stock? Let's find out. Because that's what you need.
Definitely.
Oh, it is. $7.50 for 8 ounces. Do it.
Place an order right after we're done here.
Yeah, that's my recommendation. Feed yourself.
It's a great recommendation.
Get some lovely granola.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm definitely going to be placing an order.
There you go. I'm an influencer. I influenced you.
Literally right this second in real time.
And what is your recommendation other than people need to keep watching Abbott Elementary?
I mean, that's my recommendation always. My other recommendation is a book that I just finished today.
You know, I think actually you have influenced many people to read books you've recommended. You're selling yourself short.
That's, you're probably right.
I think
the weird shit I read has some other people seem to like it too. So
I think 4 or 5 of our listeners have been influenced by you.
That's fair. That is fair. Well, I'm hoping to influence someone else because I finished a really good book today called Paradise by, I think, Lizzie Johnson? Lizzie Johnson? Lizzie something. I really liked this book. This is a nonfiction book about the 2018 campfire in California.
It is Lizzie Johnson.
Lizzie Johnson.
Yeah.
Um, it talks about, so the campfire was the deadliest wildfire in California history, in the history of the United States, I think. And actually, I think it may have been the one of the most expensive natural disasters ever in the world, as
Wow.
far as the destruction that it did. It destroyed a lot of Butte County in California, including basically the entire town of Paradise. um the story is wild. It's harrowing. She talks about, what caused the wildfire, what causes wildfires in general, how they're fought. She also, basically, the whole book is telling the story of a whole bunch of people who were there that day, from people who had to flee, residents of Paradise, firefighters, 911 dispatchers. They had to evacuate a hospital. People who average citizens who put hospital patients in their cars and tried to escape with them. The fire killed, I think, 85 people. It was a very deadly wildfire. I found the book very informative, as far as, she talks about the causes of this particular wildfire, which, of course, global warming plays a factor, but also kind of the usual suspects of corporate greed,
Was it a
human incompetence.
Was it a gender reveal party?
It was not a gender reveal party. I think
okay.
that one was in Arizona, wasn't it? I don't remember. This fire was caused by a power line that was not maintained properly, and one of the hooks in the power line disintegrated because it was 100 years old or something, and should have been inspected but wasn't. Anyway.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so that sparked the wildfire, but of course was made worse by 100 years of colonial fire suppression techniques. She talks about how, for centuries, the Native American people would do controlled burns to refresh the forest, and that has not been done because colonial settlers believed that fire was bad always, and that basically you just fought a fire when you saw it, but that has caused the forest to get overgrown and basically just full to the brim with kindling, and it makes our wildfires so much worse. She talks about that. It was overall very fascinating, but also, in addition, I found the book to be beautifully written. She's an excellent writer. She tells these stories with a lot of care. The whole book was very moving. I really, really enjoyed the entire reading experience. If you listen to the audiobook like I did, the author reads the story and just does an excellent job. I think it's super good. There is also there's a couple documentaries. There's one that I watched that is a few years old now, I think, on Netflix. So if you want to read the book and then see the images of people who were fleeing from Paradise, there's a harrowing story about a bus driver who had a bus full of kids and 2 teachers on board.
Oh my god.
And that story I remember being told in the documentary, and it's also in the book. So I think the Netflix documentary it's either called Paradise also, or it might be called Fire in Paradise. I don't remember. There's another documentary that I don't know if it's out yet. It may be kind of new, called Rebuilding Paradise, which she mentions at the end of the book. I haven't seen that one. I think it's a Nat Geo documentary. So you might want to watch that too. I liked it. I liked it a lot. And I highly recommend it. I feel like I'm always saying, read this book if you think nonfiction is boring. And this is, I feel like, a really good example of that type of book, because there were a few passages in the book that made me pause, that kind of took my breath away. They were so beautiful, and I feel like that's not something you often get in nonfiction. Nonfiction does, I hate to admit this, but can be a little dry, and this book was absolutely not that. It was really well done, so highly recommend.
People write dry fiction too. It's just
fair. That is fair.
Matter skill. That sounds like the most you book. If I saw this book, I would be like, oh, Samantha would like this. I don't know. There's just a certain type of nonfiction, in-depth nonfiction about a weird tragic thing. There you go. Oh,
you're not wrong about that.
I think you need,
based on my history of reading about deadly epidemics. I went through a whole phase last year reading about natural disasters. I read a book about a tornado. I read a book about I don't know what it is about that genre. I think I like seeing like communities come together to overcome
Oh. See,
things like natural
that's a very
disasters.
positive take on a dark subject. I want to see you get. I don't even know if this matters anymore without so much physical bookstores, but you know how they would put that like gold Oprah club thing on the cover of books? So it was like, you should buy this book. Oprah likes it.
Samantha's book club is just the
Yes.
most depressing shit that
Yes.
will ruin your life just by
Exactly.
reading it.
Exactly.
I'm sure people will sign up for that left. There'll be lines down the street.
That's what I want to see in the world. I want to be in a Barnes and Noble and see a little seal.
Samantha's book club. It'll make you want to die.
Yeah. And people will be like, oh, Samantha likes it.
I want to be sad today. I definitely should read this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a great recommendation. Okay, that brings us to the end of our episode. And this is the part where we tell you to do Samantha a solid and subscribe and give us
Smash that subscribe button
and give us a 5-star review. And
sign up for Repod.
Yeah.
Listen to us on Repod. Can you review podcasts on there? I don't know, but you should definitely download the app.
Download the app to find out. It's a mystery. And I don't know. Oh, you should buy our zine. And
Yes.
there's information about that at our website, perhapsitsyou.com, under merch. And if you have a story of something spooky that's happened to you, were you a child who saw ghosts and interacted with them? We want to know. That's perhapsitsyou.podcast@gmail.com. And then we say something about Patreon. I don't know. Did you know there's a show called Bone Detectives? I thought I made that up, but it's real, and we're going to talk about it. That's this month. Bone Detectives.
I'm excited to talk about Bone Detectives.
Just search for us on Patreon since we always have our link wrong. And I think that's pretty much it, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well,
If we forgot something, whatever. We'll talk about it next week.
Okay. Thanks, BD Wong. Thanks, 5 listeners. Keep barking, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Mom.